Awesome. Okay. Well, both of you, thank you so much again for making the time. So yes, speaking of, it's been 1 year since you appointed the chief to be the chief. So Chief Smith, if you can talk about, what do you feel that you've accomplished in the last year? What would you say is your biggest accomplishment?
I think the biggest accomplishment is really community engagement for us. I think the accomplishment I think that was taking place prior to my arrival was the fact that the mayor was working very diligently on legislation specifically related to public safety and how we would address crime, and how the Metropolitan Police Department would have a policy-led environment to really address the different types of crimes that we were seeing. And we certainly saw an uptick in crime last year. But for every task, like I said earlier, that I provided or presented to the team, they've met the threshold of that, and we're very, very happy about where we are today. We recognize that we still have a ways to go. We still plan to stay focused on the things that we need to stay focused on with our communities, with our federal, state, and local partners, law enforcement partners, and certainly with the mayor's leadership on how she has been extremely supportive of public safety prior to my arrival, and even more so now.
And Mayor, as it relates to the crime initiatives that you've really sought to come into place, how important was it for you to sign Secure DC into law, which ultimately continues a lot of the initiatives that you had spearheaded?
Well, I think it was really most important as I was looking back on July 17th, the previous week. We introduced a piece of emergency legislation going into the summer while I was interviewing for the next police chief. And we felt very, very strongly about the council putting in emergency measures that would help us have a safer summer in the end of last year. And what we saw is that we were able to target people who are using guns in our city and hold them, even pre-trial. Similarly, for young people who had been violent, really putting a light on it, and telling everybody you have to hold young people who are committing crimes in our city so that we can give them the services that they need and the accountability that they need.
And as it relates to Secure DC, if we can talk about, the emergency passage of it that had already gone into effect. Chief, what changes have you noticed since then, and how has it helped as it relates to, say, carjackings or drug-free zones?
I think one of the most important pieces of that was giving our officers the ability to be able to pursue individuals who are actively engaged in felonious activity, and it really gave us that room that we needed to be able to apprehend some of these individuals and take them into custody. I think, to the mayor's point, the accountability piece, right? Ensuring that as we have arrested these individuals, that they're being held and that they're not getting back out on the street. And what we found was that it was a small, finite number of individuals committing these crimes. And what we had been hearing even the year before was that they were getting back out on the street. And the legislation with the mayor and the council that was passed gave us the opportunity, because it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to arrest the same individuals 9 times, 10 times, 12 times. And what we're seeing now is that our judges, our attorney generals, our U.S. Attorney's Office, and the courts are holding these individuals. And I think that has certainly been based off of the legislation that has been passed to keep these individuals in a place, to the mayor's point, where they can be rehabilitated. But then also, I say the same thing. If they're committing the crime, they need to be arrested. And some of them need to be held a little longer than that.
Yeah, and actually, as it relates to all of that, the U.S. Attorney has recently said that it's harder to prosecute carjackings here in D.C. versus to other jurisdictions. He's pointing to the Youth Rehabilitation Act, and he even went so far as to say he's looking for carjackings to be exempt from there. Mayor, do you feel that the district needs to make changes here as it relates to the YRA?
We have made changes to a number of our laws, and I have not ever been in support of expanding the age where the YRA applies, and I think that deserves some consideration.
And as it relates to, I guess, limiting the age, so maybe lowering, I know you're aware that the House recently passed its bill. Would you ever consider introducing legislation that would limit reduced sentencing for those minor, or for I should say adult offenders under the age of 25?
I think it bears consideration, but I think the place to do it is in this building with the members of the council. I think it was expanded at a time where we didn't have broad consideration, and that's not something I've been supportive of.
And as it relates to, if we can talk a little bit more about violent crime, so overall down 33% year to date, and of course it happens to be the very same date that you started, Chief. So question for both of you, what specific programs do you believe have helped to curb crime here?
So I was very excited when the mayor appointed me. I mean, she didn't know this, but I think I said it once before. I've watched her over the years, and I wanted to have an opportunity to work for her because I saw how supportive she was of public safety here in the District of Columbia. And so at appointment, I spent some time really diving into data and looking at details. And one of the things that I noticed was, I think everybody was saying robberies, carjackings, burglaries, and those violent crimes and property crimes being committed. And I took the time to look at dates, times, when these incidents were occurring, and stood up our robbery suppression initiative. Robbery suppression initiative, 70 to 80 officers between Thursday evening and early Sunday morning. That's where we saw this most significant increase in crime, and had those officers really get out there and address those crimes. When I heard from the community was saying, I want to see more police officers. We need to see police officers in our communities. One of the things that I directed the commanders to do, week one, was public safety walks in all of our districts once a week. This makes 52 weeks. I think 52 weeks gives us 1 year. They have been conducting public safety walks in all of the districts for 52 weeks.
Wow. And is that at least once a week, or are they encouraged to do more if there's time?
If they do more. They do more if they would like to. Not only that, but they have Citizens Advisory Council meetings with the community, our ANC meetings with the community, and we've been very present. I've heard from the community members and stakeholders and just people that are visiting DC, the number of police officers that they see at some of our cultural events that we're having here in DC, whether it's a sports arena, whether it's a nightlife task force area. We've enhanced and we increased the number of personnel that we had assigned there. And as you know, the nightlife task force area is not specific to just MPD, but it's also the other government agencies under DC who come out and help us in that area at night. And I have to give them credit for the amazing work that they continue to do every Friday night and every Saturday night down in that establishment. We know that folks come from all across the U.S., really. To be honest, when they're visiting family members, they come to DC for that nightlife area, and we want to make sure that they have an enjoyable time, and that includes ensuring that we have the personnel down there to support that. And so we've been really heavy on that. And then, of course, our homicide reduction partnership plan with our federal agencies and also our DC government agencies. We typically would start that during the summertime. I tasked the team with starting it the latter part of last year, so that we knew crime was very high last summer. We didn't want to go into the summer with those same numbers.
And actually, before I get to you, Mayor, with this increased community policing approach, what positive changes have you seen from that? Do you feel like that's made an impact already?
I do. You call it community-oriented policing. I call it relationship-based policing. Because at the end of the day, I want the officers, to include myself, to know the members of our community, build relationships with them. So when they see something, they will say something. We started to rebuild the trust level that we have in our community. And I think it's made a positive difference, and we'll continue to build upon that.
Yeah. And Mayor, same original question for you as it relates to crime going down a third year to date. What specific programs on your end do you believe have helped here?
I believe that the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department are following the chief's lead in her vision for driving down crime in the city. I believe that our community has been our partner, and I believe our stakeholders have stepped up to the plate to help us drive down crime. But I firmly believe the small number of people who are using guns, who have been committing these carjackings, are now being held accountable. They're off the streets, and that is helping us to focus on all of our communities, focus on getting guns off of our streets, and keeping our community safe.
And as it relates to efforts to continue keeping our communities safe. Chief, if we can ask you where things stand with the number of open positions that we have right now with patrol officers, and what are your hopes going forward?
And so we're still, we're maintaining a steady number. We've been roughly, since I've been in this space, about 600 officers down. And we're still maintaining that. We're hiring officers every month, at least 15 to 17 officers per month. They're graduating. I think last month we graduated 20 officers and distribute them across our district. And so for me, it's really about making sure that we're continuing the hiring efforts to ensure that we get other police officers. But the other piece of it is that because we know we're down, we have to look at other alternatives to augment that, right? Like technology. We have the Real-Time Crime Center, bringing in our partners in that space to help us, specifically because if they help us, they help themselves, right? Because there are no jurisdictional boundaries when individuals decide they want to commit crimes. So it's helping all of us in this region, but then making sure that we have the unmanned aircraft systems that we just launched last month, and making sure that we are keeping up with our equipment. We just launched our new helicopter, and making sure that it has the technology that we need when crimes are being committed and they're out on patrol. We can get a download a link right into our real-time crime center to help us to address crimes. So when we know we're down officers, but we also have to leverage other tools in order to support what we need to do to address crime.
But I also think changes to the law have been a big boost to the chief's recruiting efforts. People want to know that they're going to come and be able to do their jobs here in a constitutional way, be partners with the community, and go home safe to their families. And so we're constantly monitoring the policy environment to make sure that it supports great policing. And so we're hiring. So if you're interested in working for a great department that has all kinds of duties, from working in neighborhoods to analyzing crime data to helping with detective work, the Metropolitan Police Department is a place for you.
Great. And Mayor, if we can talk budget for a little bit, we saw the letter that you sent to the chairman yesterday, and he sent us a statement in response about returning the council's budget. He had mentioned that you're criticizing the four-year total of $530 million, while you saw a four-year total increase of $1.8 billion. And he had made an interesting note of saying he's wondering if you're asking Congress take note and intervene in our local affairs. So I'd like to get your response to that.
Well, my letter was to the chairman of the council, and I send a letter with all of my legislation that doesn't get my support, so it's no different. And that letter itself wasn't much different than the letter I sent them on the 2 times that they voted on the budget. And it certainly wasn't different than the many conversations I had with all of the council members, where I explained that if you raise taxes needlessly, if you reverse cuts that we need to make, I won't support the budget. So my letter, I'm sure, is no surprise to the chairman or any members of the council or anybody in the public who has heard me talk about my concerns about creating new programs and raising taxes. This is what I have a lot of concern about, and I have to speak out because at one point somebody asked me, how did we get to be 400 police officers down? And what that person, that taxpayer, didn't realize is that in a council budget, they defunded the police. And so next year, when people are getting their property tax bills and their residential property taxes go up, they have to know why. And that's because we raised taxes on homes when we didn't need to. And next year, I believe that that tax increase could be even more significant. So what I'm telling folks is, listen, folks, this is what I know happened. This is what my concern is. And if you're concerned about that, then this is what we need to do.
And I know you've said repeatedly, this is, in your whole tenure, the toughest budget that you had to then bring to them. If we can talk about some of the different crime initiatives and some of the hard choices you had to make, I'd like to get both of your take on how the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, how do you feel this program is going at this point?
Well, certainly it is something that we've invested in, and it's new-ish. It's been around for 5 years. We've grown the budget based on the infusion of federal dollars around COVID. And we are very proud of a program that we call Pathways that really works with people who have a lot of employment challenges, that have been involved in the criminal justice system, who need to work and who are ready to work. And we know that doubling down on the investment in Pathways, we think, is the best use of those dollars.
Oh, I see. Versus the funding that was cut to onesie?
No, that's part of ONCE. Yes, they operate the Pathways program. And I don't believe any funding was cut. We no longer have the federal dollars.
So that led to the price difference there, was the loss of the federal funding?
Yes.
And then I think we're wrapping up. Okay. My last question, if we have time, Chief, if we can talk about, obviously it's been a busy few days. We had an attempted assassination of a former president, obviously happened outside of DC, but DC is obviously such a high profile targeted area. So if we can talk about how is MPD working with other agencies really to make sure that everyone here continues to stay safe?
Well, as you know, this is the area where all of the federal agencies pretty much reside across the District of Columbia, and we don't work any differently with them prior to the assassination attempt as we would after. I think we are all communicating effectively regarding what happened, but I think the most important thing is that we continue to work together every single day, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day. We know that we have an election coming up. We know that we have an inauguration coming up. We work very, very closely with our federal and state partners to ensure that we'll have the resources that we need to address anything that may occur here in DC.
And is it, I know you can't get into specifics as it relates to safety and security, but anything different in terms of, is it more hands on deck? Is it more, can you paint us a picture a little bit?
Well, I think anytime there is an increased threat, to whether it's a member of Congress or former president, I mean, we all take the time to look at our security plans, right? I think that's the most appropriate thing to do to ensure that we're all working together to ensure the safety of anyone, any dignitary, any members of Congress, any political officials here in the district can remain safe. And that comes by way of the Metropolitan Police Department. We lead a bi-weekly meeting with all of our federal, local, and state partners on a bi-weekly basis to address crime or to address security measures here in the District of Columbia.
And it's been a big year for the both of you. Just my last question, is there anything else you'd like to add here, just about the accomplishments that you've made over the past year?
Well, I'm just incredibly proud of the chief. I'm incredibly proud of our force. I'm grateful to DC residents and businesses who worked hand in hand with the government to drive down crime. We know we have a beautiful city. We know we have, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, the best city in the world. And we see our thriving restaurants, entertainment facilities, our games are sold out, our concerts are sold out. And people are using our Metro Rail, so they're voting with their feet. And we're just going to keep on doing the hard work, and we're going to keep making sure we're putting in initiatives that work.
I echo the mayor's sentiments.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.